Imagine standing in front of your whole pack, chest puffed, voice booming, declaring, "You're weak. You're nothing." You then laugh. Your friends cheer. You brag for weeks about how you dodged a bullet, while she walks away with her head high and her heart in pieces. Months later, you strut into the most powerful gathering of alphas and elders, like you own the moon. And there she is, not broken, not begging, radiant, standing right beside the legendary alpha elder, the living myth, the keeper of ancient power that makes modern kings look like children playing dress-up. Her father, and he looks at you with eyes older than time and says, calm as death, "You bragged about rejecting my daughter." The room freezes, your smirk dies. Your wolf whimpers, and in that single heartbeat you realize, you didn't just reject your mate, you rejected the one woman who could have made you legendary.
Before we continue, please kindly tell us where you are watching from, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button, because every day we have amazing stories that will make your day.
Chapter 1. The Shattered Bond. The full moon hung low over the Moonshadow Pack's clearing, casting a silver glow that turned the forest into a realm of shadows and secrets. Aiden stood at the center of it all, his broad shoulders squared, muscles rippling under his fitted black shirt that clung to his sweat-dampened skin. At 25, he was the youngest alpha in generations, thrust into power after his father's untimely death in a rogue skirmish. No mentors had guided him. He'd forged his rule through sheer force, his deep voice commanding loyalty, his piercing green eyes demanding submission. He felt invincible, the blood of warriors pulsing through his veins like wildfire. But tonight that fire burned with something darker, discontent. His gaze fixed on Celine, his fated mate, standing quietly beside him. She was a vision under the moonlight, long, raven hair cascading like a midnight river down her back, her curves accentuated by a simple emerald dress that hugged her hips and dipped low enough to tease the swell of her breasts. Her amber eyes held a depth that unnerved him, a quiet intelligence that saw through his bravado. In public, she was his shield, deflecting barbs from rival packs with graceful words. In private, she was his mirror, reflecting truths he didn't want to face. Aiden's mind flashed back to their first night together, months ago when the mate bond had ignited like a storm. He'd claimed her in the heart of the woods under that same moon. Her skin had been soft as silk against his rough hands, her moans a symphony that echoed through the trees. He'd pinned her against an ancient oak, his lips trailing fire down her neck, nipping at the spot where his mark would one day seal their union. "You're mine," he'd growled, his voice husky with need. As he lifted her legs around his waist, she'd arched into him, her nails digging into his back, drawing blood that only heightened the pleasure. Their bodies moved in perfect rhythm, her heat enveloping him, pulling him deeper until they shattered together in ecstasy. In that moment he'd felt complete, powerful, yet vulnerable in a way that thrilled and terrified him. But vulnerability wasn't for alphas. Not in his world. Celine's calm advice grated on him now. Aiden, allying with the Bloodridge pack, could bring peace, she'd whispered last night in their shared chambers, her fingers tracing lazy circles on his chest after another heated encounter. He'd been buried inside her moments before, her legs wrapped around him as he thrust with raw intensity, her gasps fueling his dominance. Yet afterward, her words pierced his post-climax haze. "Your temper pushes them away. Let me help bridge the gap." He'd shoved her hand aside, rolling away with a scoff. "I don't need a nanny, Celine. I need a Luna who fights, not one who whispers platitudes." Now, as the pack gathered for the monthly assembly, Aiden's frustration boiled over. The air was thick with the scent of pine and anticipation, wolves shifting restlessly in human form. Celine stood poised, her hand lightly on his arm, a touch that sent unwelcome sparks through him even now. He shook it off, stepping forward onto the raised stone platform. The crowd hushed, eyes wide with expectation. "I, Aiden, alpha of the Moonshadow Pack, stand before you under the witness of the Moon Goddess," he boomed, his voice echoing like thunder, his chest puffed with false certainty, hiding the gnawing doubt that Celine's insights had planted. "I reject you, Celine, as my mate and Luna. You are weak, unfit to rule beside me. Your softness is a chain I will no longer bear." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Celine's face paled, but she didn't flinch. Inside, the mate bond snapped like a taut wire, sending agony ripping through her core. It felt like acid in her veins, a burning void where his essence had once filled her. Memories flooded her, stolen kisses in the dawn light, his strong arms enveloping her after hunts, the way he'd whispered forever during their most intimate nights. Those moments had been pure joy, her heart swelling with love that made her smile even in chaos. But now, pain eclipsed it all, a sharp, unrelenting stab that threatened to buckle her knees. The pack's reactions varied. Some warriors cheered, slapping Aiden on the back, their laughter crude and loud. "Dodged a weak link, Alpha," one shouted. Aiden forced a grin, his ego inflating like a balloon. "That's right. I saved us from dragging dead weight. She'll crawl back begging, watch. No one leaves an alpha like me." But Celine didn't beg. She met his gaze one last time, her amber eyes shimmering with unshed tears that held a quiet storm. The pain was exquisite, a blend of heartbreak and the faint, bittersweet smile of someone who knew her worth, even if he didn't. Without a word, she turned, her dress whispering against the grass as she walked through the parting crowd. Each step was torture, the bond's remnants clawing at her soul, but she held her head high. Dignity was her armor, forged in the fires of his rejection. Aiden watched her go, a flicker of unease twisting in his gut. He pushed it down, turning to his betas with a boastful laugh. "See? She's nothing without me. Let's celebrate. I've freed us for greater things." The night devolved into revelry, ale flowing, stories of his bold moves spreading like wildfire. He bragged to anyone who listened, his voice laced with arrogance. "I rejected trash and came out stronger. Who needs a mate who questions you when you can rule alone?" Days blurred into weeks. Aiden threw himself into pack affairs, forging risky alliances with brute force. He bedded a few willing she-wolves, their encounters rough and fleeting, nothing like the electric connection with Celine. One night, alone in his chambers, he traced the empty side of the bed where she'd slept, a pang of regret sneaking in, but he dismissed it as weakness, focusing on expansion. His pack grew, territories expanded, and his reputation as a fierce leader soared. Whispers of his rejection became legend, a tale of an alpha who chose power over fate. Celine, meanwhile, vanished into the wilderness. The pain of the broken bond lingered, a constant ache that made her nights sleepless. She wandered, seeking solace in ancient ruins her mother had once spoken of, places tied to forgotten lore. In quiet moments, she'd remember the happy times, lazy afternoons by the river, Aiden's rare smiles when she teased him, the way his touch had made her feel alive, cherished. Those memories brought a sad smile to her lips even as tears fell. "You fool," she'd whisper to the wind, her heart torn between love lost and the budding realization that she was more than his shadow. Months passed. Aiden's confidence peaked as invitations arrived for the Grand Conclave, a sacred gathering of elder bloodlines, where alliances were sealed and destinies shaped. He strode into the ancient hall, smirking, ready to claim his place among legends. The air hummed with power, torches flickering on stone walls etched with runes. Then he saw him, seated among the veiled elders, exuding an aura that made the room's atmosphere thicken like storm clouds, was Elder Draven, the legendary Alpha Elder. Whispers of him echoed in old tales. The wolf who predated packs, wielder of true ancient power that could bend nature itself. His eyes glowed faintly, silver hair framing a face carved from timeless stone. Peaceful by choice, but his presence commanded instinctive bows. Aiden's smirk faltered. His eyes shifted to the woman at Draven's side, Celine, transformed, her aura pulsed with inherited strength, her posture regal, eyes holding a wisdom that pierced him. She wasn't broken. She radiated. Draven's voice rumbled, ancient and unyielding. "You bragged of rejecting my daughter, boy," called her weak, "but you discarded a legacy you could never comprehend." The words struck like lightning. Aiden's wolf whimpered inwardly, regret flooding him in waves, violent, all-consuming. He'd insulted not just a mate, but the heir to primal power. The hall fell silent, eyes on him as his world cracked. Celine's gaze met his, a mix of pain and quiet triumph. A small, painful smile touched her lips. Not vengeful, but knowing. She'd lost love but gained herself, and in that moment Aiden realized the true cost of his arrogance. Chapter 2. Echoes of Regret. The Grand Conclave Hall seemed to shrink in the wake of Elder Draven's words. The ancient stone walls, etched with runes older than any living memory, absorbed the silence like a living thing. Aiden stood frozen at the threshold, the smirk that had carried him through months of bravado now a ghost on his lips. His heart hammered against his ribs, each beat a painful reminder of the void where the mate bond used to live. The air tasted metallic, heavy with the scent of old power and fresh humiliation. He couldn't tear his eyes from Celine. She stood beside her father, unchanged yet utterly transformed. Her raven hair caught the torchlight like liquid night, her amber eyes steady, holding no malice, only a quiet, unshakable certainty that cut deeper than any claw ever could. The dress she wore now was midnight silk, clinging to her curves in a way that made Aiden's throat tighten with memory and loss. She looked like she belonged here among legends, while he felt like an intruder in his own story. Draven rose slowly. The elder's presence pressed against every wolf in the room, a gentle weight that made knees tremble instinctively. His silver hair gleamed, eyes glowing faintly with the color of moonlight on frost. "You spoke of weakness, young Alpha," he continued, voice low and resonant, carrying the echo of centuries. "Yet you failed to see strength and restraint in wisdom, in the woman who could have tempered your fire into something unbreakable." Aiden's wolf whimpered again, soft, pitiful, a sound he'd never heard from his own beast. Regret surged through him, hot and violent, like molten silver poured into old wounds. He wanted to drop to his knees, to beg forgiveness, to roar that he hadn't understood. But pride, stubborn, stupid pride, kept him upright. The hall watched in stunned hush. Whispers began, soft at first, then spreading like wildfire. The rejected Luna was no ordinary wolf. She was heir to the primal bloodline, the one true ancient power left in the world. Celine's gaze flickered to Aiden for a heartbeat longer. In that instant he saw everything, the pain he'd caused, the nights she'd walked alone with the bond tearing at her soul, the quiet tears she'd hidden from the world. But there was something else too, a small, bittersweet smile that tugged at her lips. Not triumphant, not cruel, just knowing she'd mourned him. She'd loved him fiercely, and somehow in the ruins of that love she'd found herself. The conclave dissolved into murmurs as elders rose, conversations shifting to alliances and prophecies. Draven placed a protective hand on Celine's shoulder, guiding her toward a shadowed alcove. Aiden moved without thinking, feet carrying him forward like a man drowning toward shore. "Celine, wait." She paused, turning slowly. The distance between them felt infinite, yet the pull was still there, electric, undeniable. Her scent, wild jasmine and warm earth, hit him like a drug, stirring memories he couldn't bury. He stopped a few paces away, chest heaving. "I didn't know." Her voice was soft, steady. "You didn't ask." The words landed like a slap. He flinched. "I was wrong, arrogant, blind. You thought power meant never needing anyone," she finished for him. Her eyes shimmered, but no tears fell. "You thought my quiet meant weakness. My advice meant control. And when I loved you enough to tell you the truth, you threw it away like it was nothing." Aiden swallowed hard. "It wasn't nothing. You were everything." His voice cracked. "Every night since, I feel the emptiness. The bed is cold. The pack feels hollow. I brag to fill the silence, but it never stops echoing." Celine studied him, the man who'd once held her like she was the center of his universe. The same man who'd shattered her with a single declaration. Pain flickered across her features, raw, aching, then softened into something gentler. "I cried for you, Aiden. For weeks. The bond breaking. It felt like dying slowly. But I survived. I found my way home, to my father, to who I was always meant to be." He took a step closer, desperate. "Give me a chance to make it right. Please, I'll kneel, I'll beg, I'll do whatever it takes." For a moment, she wavered. He saw it, the flicker of old love in her eyes, the way her breath caught. Then she straightened. "Some things can't be undone with words, Aiden. And some wounds need time." She turned to leave, but he reached out, fingers brushing her wrist. The contact sparked like lightning, hot, electric, awakening every nerve. She froze, breath hitching. In that suspended second, memory crashed over them both. Flashback. Their cabin deep in the woods, rain pounding the roof. An argument had raged, about alliances, about his recklessness. Words turned sharp, then heated. Aiden had grabbed her waist, pulling her against him with bruising force. "You drive me insane," he'd growled, lips crashing into hers. She'd pushed back at first, angry, hurt, then melted, hands fisting in his shirt. He'd lifted her, slamming her against the rough wooden wall, her legs wrapping around his hips instinctively. Clothes tore away in frantic need. His mouth devoured her neck, teeth grazing the spot where his mark should have been permanent. She moaned his name, nails raking down his back as he thrust into her, hard, deep, possessive. Their rhythm was desperate, bodies slick with sweat, rain drumming in time with their gasps. He'd whispered filthy promises against her skin, each stroke claiming her, each cry pulling him closer to the edge. When they shattered together, her head thrown back in ecstasy, he'd felt invincible. Complete. The memory faded. They stood inches apart now, breathing ragged, the air thick with unspoken want. Celine pulled her wrist free gently. That fire between us, it was real, but it wasn't enough to make you see me. She stepped back, but as she did, a faint glow pulsed along her collarbone. Subtle, silver blue. A mark awakening. Ancient power stirring in her veins. Aiden's eyes widened. What is that? Celine touched it lightly, a sad smile curving her lips. My inheritance. The one you could have shared. The one you threw away. She walked away then, leaving him in the alcove with the echo of her scent and the weight of everything he'd lost. Aiden sank against the wall, sliding down until he sat on the cold stone. Regret wrapped around him like chains, painful, suffocating. Yet beneath it, a tiny, fragile spark. Hope. She hadn't said never. She hadn't hated him. And that spark burned brighter than any pride ever could. Outside the hall, the moon watched in silence, waiting for what came next. Episode 3, Forbidden Allure. Aiden remained slumped against the cold stone wall long after Celine's footsteps faded into the shadowed corridors of the Grand Conclave. The torchlight flickered across his face, painting sharp angles of regret and longing. His wolf paced restlessly inside him, claws scraping against the cage of his ribs, urging him to chase, to claim, to fix what he had so brutally broken. But the man knew better now. Some distances could not be crossed with force. He finally pushed himself upright, muscles aching from the weight of everything unsaid. The hall had emptied. Only a few lingering elders moved like ghosts among the rune-carved pillars. Aiden stepped out into the night. The mountain air was crisp, scented with pine and distant snow. Moonlight bathed the ancient stone steps leading down from the conclave fortress. He paused at the top, gaze sweeping the sprawling valley below. Somewhere out there, Celine walked beside her father, carrying a legacy he had once dismissed as weakness. And then he saw her. Not far down the wide stone path beneath the spreading branches of an enormous silver oak, Celine stood alone. She had slipped away from the group, seeking solitude. The moonlight caught the silver-blue glow at her collarbone again, fainter now, but unmistakable. It pulsed gently, like a second heartbeat. Her midnight silk dress moved with the breeze, outlining every graceful line of her body. She looked ethereal, untouchable, and yet so achingly familiar. Aiden's breath caught. His feet moved before his mind could argue. She sensed him long before he reached her. Her shoulders stiffened slightly, but she did not turn. You shouldn't be here, she said quietly, voice carrying on the wind. I know. He stopped several paces away, close enough to feel the pull, far enough to respect the boundary she had drawn. But I couldn't leave without seeing you one more time tonight. Celine finally turned. Her amber eyes caught the moonlight and held it, shimmering with emotions too complex to name. Sorrow. Strength. A flicker of something dangerously close to the old tenderness. You always did like to push boundaries, she murmured, the barest hint of a sad smile touching her lips. Aiden's chest tightened. I used to think that was strength. Now I see it was just fear. Fear of needing anyone. Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken years. Celine tilted her head, studying him the way she once had when they lay tangled together after dawn hunts. Quiet, searching, seeing straight through every wall he tried to build. You're different, she said at last. Not an accusation, an observation. The arrogance is still there, but it's cracked now. He gave a low, broken laugh. Cracked wide open, you did that. No, she corrected gently. You did that, when you chose pride over truth. Another long pause. The wind stirred the oak leaves above them, silver and whispering. Then slowly, Aiden took one careful step closer. Not touching. Never touching. just narrowing the space between them until the heat of their bodies mingled in the cold night air. "I still feel you," he whispered, voice rough with everything he'd held back for months. "Even with the bond broken. Every time the moon rises, I feel the echo of you. It's torture. And it's the only thing keeping me human." Celine's breath hitched. She looked away toward the valley, lashes dark against her cheeks. "I feel it too," she admitted so softly he almost missed it. "A phantom thread. It pulls when you're near. It aches when you're gone. But it doesn't mean we can go back." "I don't want to go back," Aiden said, the words spilling out raw and urgent. "I want to start again. From the beginning. Knowing who you are. Knowing who I should have been." She met his gaze then, and the look in her eyes nearly undid him. Painful, tender, guarded, alive. "You don't get to decide when the story restarts, Aiden." Her voice trembled just enough to betray the storm inside her. "You don't get to walk back in and demand a second chapter." "I'm not demanding," he said hoarsely. "I'm asking, on my knees if I have to." He started to lower himself, slowly, deliberately. Celine's hand shot out instinctively, fingers curling around his forearm, stopping him mid-motion. The contact scorched them both. For one suspended heartbeat, neither moved. Her grip was firm, warm, trembling. His pulse thundered under her fingertips. The air between them crackled, thick with the memory of every stolen touch, every whispered promise, every time their bodies had spoken what words could never contain. Then she released him, stepping back as if burned. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't make this harder than it already is." Aiden stayed half-crouched for a second longer before rising again, eyes never leaving hers. "I'm not going anywhere," he said quietly. "Not because I think I deserve you, but because I finally understand what I lost, and I'll spend the rest of my life proving I can be worthy of even the smallest piece of your forgiveness." Celine's throat worked. She looked at him, really looked. And for the first time since the rejection, he saw the war inside her, the part that still loved him fighting the part that had learned to survive without him. Then from the path above, Elder Draven's deep voice rolled down like distant thunder. "Celine." She straightened instantly, composure sliding back into place like armor. "I have to go," she said. Aiden nodded once, throat too tight for words. She turned to leave, then paused, glancing back over her shoulder. "Tomorrow," she said softly, "the council will announce the trial of worth. Elder Draven, my father, has decided there must be a reckoning. For the insult. For the bloodline. For everything." Aiden's stomach dropped. He knew what that meant. Ancient trials were not games, they were brutal, they were final. Celine's eyes held his for one last searing moment. "If you truly want redemption," she whispered, "you'll have to earn it, and if you fail, there will be no third chance." Then she walked away, disappearing into the silvered night, leaving Aiden alone beneath the ancient oak with nothing but the echo of her touch on his skin, and the knowledge that tomorrow he would either begin to win her back or lose her forever. Chapter 4: Trials of the Heart. The silver oak's leaves still rustled in Aiden's ears as he watched Celine disappear up the winding path. Her final words lingered like smoke. Trial of worth, a phrase that carried the weight of old legends and fresh dread. He stayed rooted beneath the tree until the first gray light of dawn crept over the mountains, turning the moon silver to pale gold. Sleep was impossible. Regret and resolve warred in his chest, each breath a reminder that tomorrow he would face judgment, not just from elders, but from the woman whose heart he had shattered. By midday, the conclave grounds had transformed. The vast stone amphitheater, carved into the mountainside once, used for ancient rites, now stood ready. Runes glowed faintly along the tiered seats where packs from across the territories gathered. The air hummed with anticipation, thick with the sense of fir, pine, and barely restrained power. Aiden arrived alone, dressed in simple black leathers, no cloak of office. Pride had no place here. He felt every eye on him as he took his position at the center of the arena floor. The stone was cold under his boots, etched with symbols of endurance, sacrifice, and truth. Elder Draven emerged first, flanked by the council. His presence silenced the crowd instantly. Celine walked at his side, head high, her midnight dress replaced by fitted dark armor that hugged her form like a second. Skin practical, elegant, radiating quiet authority. The silver-blue mark at her collarbone caught the light, a subtle reminder of the legacy Aiden had once mocked. Draven's voice rolled across the amphitheater like distant thunder. The insult to the primal bloodline cannot stand unanswered. Aiden of Moonshadow, you rejected your fated mate and bragged of her weakness. Today you prove your worth, or forfeit any claim to her forgiveness, and to the respect of this council. Aiden lifted his chin. I accept. Murmurs rippled through the stands. Celine's gaze met his across the distance, steady, unreadable, yet laced with something that made his heart twist. Not hatred, not pity, a quiet, aching hope she refused to voice. The trial began. First came the trial of solitude. Aiden was led to a shadowed chamber deep within the mountain, sealed with ancient wards. No food, no water, no company, only darkness and the echo of his own thoughts for 3 full days. In that endless night, memories assaulted him. The way Celine's laughter had once filled their cabin at dawn, the gentle press of her hand on his arm when he raged, the nights she'd stayed awake, waiting for him to return from reckless hunts, her worry hidden behind calm words. He'd called it weakness. Now he saw it for what it was, strength that had held him together when he was too blind to hold himself. Isolation stripped him bare. He paced the chamber until his legs gave out, then sat with his back to the wall, head in hands. Tears came, silent, burning, tears he hadn't shed since his father's death. Sadness crashed over him in waves, for the mate he'd lost, for the leader he'd failed to become, for the man he'd been too arrogant to grow into. On the third dawn, the chamber opened. Aiden emerged gaunt, eyes hollow but burning with new clarity. The crowd watched in silence as he walked back to the arena floor. The second trial, the trial of truth. He stood before the council, before Celine, and spoke every ugly truth aloud. No excuses, no softening. He recounted the rejection word for word, the cruelty, the bragging, the laughter. He spoke of the emptiness that followed, the hollow victories, the nights he'd stared at the empty side of the bed and felt like a stranger in his own skin. I was afraid, he admitted, voice raw. Afraid that needing her meant I was less, afraid that her wisdom would eclipse my strength. I was wrong. She was never less. She was always more. Celine listened without speaking. Her expression remained composed, but her fingers tightened at her sides. A single tear escaped, tracing a slow path down her cheek before she brushed it away. The final trial, the trial of sacrifice. Draven presented a single obsidian dagger. To prove you understand the cost of your actions, you must offer something of value. Not blood, not territory. A piece of yourself that matters. Aiden took the dagger without hesitation. He looked straight at Selene. I offer my title, he said. If I am deemed unworthy, I will step down as Alpha of Moonshadow. The pack will choose a new leader. I will walk as a lone wolf until I earn the right to stand beside anyone again. Gasps echoed through the stands. Giving up an alpha position was unheard of, worse than death for most. It meant vulnerability, exile, starting from nothing. Celine's eyes widened, the first crack in her composure. Pain and something softer flickered across her face. Sadness for what he was willing to lose, and the faintest reluctant spark of admiration. Draven studied him long and hard, then nodded once. The trials are complete. The council conferred in low voices. Minutes stretched into eternity. Finally, Draven spoke. Your worth is acknowledged, not perfect, but proven. The debt of insult is paid in humility. The choice now belongs to the one you wronged. All eyes turned to Selena. She stepped forward slowly. The wind caught her hair, lifting strands like dark silk. She stopped just out of reach, close enough that Aiden could see the storm in her amber eyes. You hurt me deeply, she said, voice steady but laced with emotion. You made me question my worth. But you also taught me I never needed your validation to begin with. Aiden's throat closed. He waited for the final blow. Celine's gaze softened, just a fraction. But you've begun to understand, and that beginning matters. She reached out, not to touch him, but to place her hand over her heart. The silver-blue mark pulsed brighter for a heartbeat. I don't forgive you yet, she whispered. Not fully, but I won't close the door forever. Aiden exhaled, shoulders sagging with relief and lingering ache. It wasn't absolution, it wasn't reunion, it was possibility. Fragile, painful, beautiful. Then the ground trembled. A low growl rolled through the valley, unnatural, ancient. Shadows stirred at the edges of the arena. Rogues? Something older? Celine's eyes snapped to the horizon. The mark at her collarbone flared. Aiden moved instinctively, stepping in front of her. What is it? She met his gaze, fierce and unafraid. Something is coming, something that senses the awakening power. Draven's voice cut through the rising tension. The trials were only the beginning. Aiden looked at Celine, wounded, weary, yet standing taller than ever. He felt the same pull he'd always felt, only now it wasn't possession. It was partnership, protection, love, stripped of ego. Whatever came next, he would face it at her side if she allowed it. But as the shadows drew closer, a deeper truth settled in his bones. The real trial was only just beginning. Chapter 5. Shadows of Betrayal. The ground's tremor died away, but the air remained charged, thick with the promise of violence. Shadows at the amphitheater's edge thickened unnaturally, coiling like smoke with teeth. Aiden instinctively shifted half a step closer to Celine, placing himself between her and whatever was stirring in the darkness. She didn't protest the movement, didn't acknowledge it either. Her gaze stayed locked on the horizon, the silver-blue mark at her collarbone flaring brighter with each heartbeat. Elder Draven raised one hand. The council fell silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. "Rogues," he said, voice calm but edged with steel. "But not ordinary ones. These carry the scent of something older, something that should have remained buried." Celine's fingers curled into fists at her sides. "They're drawn to the awakening, to me." Aiden felt the words like a punch to the sternum. Every protective instinct roared to life. "Then they'll have to go through me first." She glanced at him, brief, piercing. In her eyes he saw the storm, gratitude warring with wariness, old love tangled with fresh caution. It was the most painful, beautiful thing he'd ever witnessed. Before anyone could speak again, howls split the night, close, coordinated, hungry. The attack came fast. Wolves poured from the tree line, larger than any rogue Aiden had ever faced, their fur matted with unnatural darkness, eyes burning crimson. They moved with purpose, not mindless rage. They were hunting. The council shifted in an instant, elders taking defensive positions, younger wolves forming a protective ring. Aiden didn't hesitate. He tore into his shift, bones cracking, fur exploding across his frame as he launched himself at the nearest attacker. The battle was brutal, visceral. Claws met flesh. Blood sprayed across ancient stone. Aiden fought with everything he had, every ounce of regret, every spark of redemption fueling his strikes. He took down 3 rogues in quick succession, their bodies crumpling at his paws. But they kept coming. He caught glimpses of Celine through the chaos. She hadn't fully shifted. Instead, she stood at the center of the arena, hands outstretched, the silver-blue light from her mark spreading like liquid moonlight across her skin. She spoke words in a language older than any pack. Aiden didn't understand them, but he felt them. The air shimmered. Vines erupted from the cracked stone floor, wrapping around rogue limbs, dragging them down. Roots burst upward, impaling attackers mid-leap. She was magnificent, terrifying, beautiful beyond words. Aiden's heart ached with pride and sorrow in equal measure. This was the power he'd once called weak. This was the woman he'd rejected. Then betrayal struck from within. One of his own betas, Marcus, the wolf who had cheered loudest at the rejection ceremony, turned on him. Marcus lunged from the side, jaws snapping for Aiden's throat. Aiden twisted at the last second, but the teeth still tore into his shoulder, ripping deep. Pain exploded white-hot. He staggered, blood soaking his fur. The shock was worse than the wound. Marcus shifted back to human form, standing over him, lips curled in disgust. "You think groveling changes anything, Aiden? You were supposed to be strong, untouchable. Instead, you're on your knees for a female who was never good enough." Aiden forced himself upright, blood dripping steadily. "She was always more than enough. You're the one who never saw it." Marcus laughed, cold, bitter. "The rogues promised us real power, not this sentimentality. They're coming for her bloodline. and we're going to deliver." Celine's head snapped toward them. Her eyes widened in pained recognition. "Marcus," the beta sneered. "Don't look at me like that, Luna. You were supposed to be nothing, and you still are, without your father's shadow." Draven's growl rolled like an avalanche. He moved faster than any wolf his age should, slamming Marcus to the ground with a single blow. But more of Aiden's former pack members stepped forward. 4, 5, eyes gleaming with the same dark promise. The realization hit Aiden like silver. The rot had been growing under his nose for months. While he'd been bragging, expanding territory, feeding his ego, traitors had taken root in his own ranks. Celine stepped between Aiden and the traitors, light pulsing brighter around her. "Enough!" Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. The vines tightened around the remaining rogues. The traitors hesitated. Aiden staggered to her side, bloodied but unbowed. He met Marcus's gaze. "You chose wrong." Marcus spat blood. "We'll see who's left standing when the real masters arrive." Draven's hand came down on Marcus's neck. "They will not." The elder's power flared, ancient, overwhelming. The traitors dropped like puppets with cut strings, unconscious but alive. The rogues shrieked and fled into the darkness, the unnatural shadows retreating with them. Silence fell, heavy, wounded. Aiden collapsed to one knee, breathing hard. Blood pooled beneath him. Celine was at his side in an instant, hands hovering, not quite touching. "You're hurt," she whispered. "I'll live." He looked up at her, vision blurring at the edges. "I'm sorry. For all of it. For not seeing them. For not seeing you." Celine's throat worked. She reached out, slowly, carefully, and pressed her palm to the worst of the wound. Warmth spread through him, not healing completely but easing the burn. Her touch lingered longer than necessary. When she pulled away, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I don't know what comes next," she said softly. "But tonight, you stood between me and danger. Not because you had to, because you chose to." Aiden managed a small, pained smile. "I'd do it again, every time." She didn't smile back, but the look she gave him was softer than any she'd offered since the rejection. Raw, conflicted, achingly tender. Draven approached, expression grave. "This was only a vanguard. The ones who sent them know her bloodline is awakening. They will come again. Stronger." Aiden forced himself to stand, swaying but determined. "Then we face them together." Celine looked between her father and the man who had once broken her heart. Something shifted in her posture, resolve hardening into quiet certainty. "Together," she echoed. But as the first light of false dawn touched the amphitheater, a scout burst through the gates, breathless. "Alpha Aiden, your pack. Moonshadow territory is under siege. They're flying banners we've never seen, black with crimson eyes." The blood drained from Aiden's face. Marcus's last words echoed in his mind. "We're going to deliver." The betrayal ran deeper than he'd realized. Celine's hand found his, brief, firm, grounding. "Whatever comes," she said quietly, "you're not facing it alone." Aiden squeezed her fingers once, then let go. The real war had just begun. Chapter 6. Blood and Bonds. The scout's words hung in the pre-dawn air like a death sentence. Moonshadow territory under siege. Black banners with crimson eyes. Aiden felt the ground tilt beneath him. His pack. His home. The wolves who had followed him through every reckless decision, every arrogant command, was burning. And the betrayal that had started with Marcus ran far deeper than he'd imagined. His shoulder throbbed, blood still seeping through the torn leather. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the hollow ache spreading through his chest. Celine's hand had already dropped from his, but the ghost of her touch lingered. Warm, steady. The only thing keeping him from shattering right there in front of the entire conclave. Draven's voice cut through the stunned silence. "We ride at first light. No one attacks a primal bloodline and walks away." Aiden shook his head once, sharp. "I go now." Celine turned to him, eyes flashing. "You're wounded, you can barely stand." "I don't care." His voice cracked on the last word. "They're my responsibility, my failure, if they die because I waited." "They won't die because you waited," she interrupted, stepping directly into his path. "They'll die because you rushed in half dead and gave the enemy exactly what they want. You, broken and easy to finish." He stared down at her, breathing hard. The urge to argue warred with the quiet, devastating truth in her eyes. She wasn't commanding him. She was protecting him. Again, like she always had. Draven placed a heavy hand on Aiden's good shoulder. She's right. You go in blind, you die. You die, Moonshadow falls faster. We move as one. Aiden's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached, but he nodded once grudgingly. The next hours passed in a blur of preparation. Healers worked on his shoulder with salves that burned worse than silver. Celine disappeared into a council tent with her father and the elders. When she emerged, her expression was calm, but the silver-blue mark at her collarbone glowed steadily now, no longer flickering. A sign the power inside her was settling, strengthening. They rode out under a sky bleeding from black to bruised purple. A small but lethal force, Draven at the head, Celine beside him, Aiden on her other flank despite every healer's protest. Behind them, a handful of trusted elders and the fastest wolves from allied packs. The journey was silent at first. Then Celine spoke, voice low enough for only Aiden to hear. "When we get there, you don't go in alone." He glanced at her. Moonlight caught the determined set of her jaw, the quiet fire in her eyes. Something inside him cracked open wider, painful, tender, alive. "I won't ask you to fight my battles," he said roughly. "I'm not asking for permission." Her tone was soft but unyielding. "This is bigger than your pack now. They want my bloodline. They'll use yours to get to me." Aiden swallowed. "Then we end it together." She didn't answer with words. Instead, she reached across the space between their mounts and let her fingers brush the back of his hand. Just once. Brief. Electric. The contact sent a jolt through him, not lust, but something deeper. Recognition. Partnership. A promise neither of them had spoken aloud yet. They rode hard. By the time the first smoke rose on the horizon, the sun had climbed, turning the sky the color of old blood. Moonshadow territory was chaos. Huts burned. Wolves clashed in the central clearing. The attackers wore no pack sigils, only those black banners snapping in the wind, crimson eyes painted like fresh wounds. They fought with unnatural coordination, their movements too precise, too savage. Aiden's heart seized when he saw the nursery hut aflame. He was off his horse before it fully stopped, shifting mid-stride, tearing into the nearest enemy. Claws met throat. Blood sprayed. He didn't think, just moved, driven by guilt, fury, and the desperate need to save what little he had left. Celine shifted beside him, sleek and deadly, her fur midnight dark with silver undertones that shimmered like moonlight on water. Together they carved a path through the invaders, but the numbers were overwhelming. A massive black wolf, clearly the leader, broke through the line, eyes locked on Celine. He lunged. Aiden intercepted, taking the blow full force. Jaws clamped around his already wounded shoulder. Pain roared white-hot. He twisted, sank his teeth into the attacker's neck, and ripped. The wolf went limp. But more came. Celine fought at his back, vines erupting from the earth at her command, roots spearing enemies, shielding the young and wounded. Her power was raw, beautiful, terrifying, and it was costing her. Aiden could see it in the way her movements slowed, the way her breathing grew ragged. He roared, a sound of pure anguish, and redoubled his efforts. The turning point came when Draven entered the fray. The legendary Alpha Elder didn't shift, he didn't need to. He simply stepped forward. The ground trembled. Trees bent as if bowing. The attackers froze mid-strike, eyes wide with instinctive terror. Then Draven lifted one hand. A wave of ancient power rolled outward, silent, unstoppable. Wolves dropped like felled trees, unconscious, breathing shallow. The black banners caught fire without flame, crumbling to ash. Silence fell, heavy, broken only by the crackle of dying fires. Aiden staggered back into human form, bloodied, exhausted. Celine shifted beside him, swaying. He caught her before she fell, arms wrapping around her instinctively. She leaned into him just for a second, forehead against his chest, breathing hard. "You're safe," he whispered against her hair. "They're safe." She lifted her head. Eyes shining with tears she refused to let fall. "We're safe," she corrected softly. Around them, surviving Moonshadow wolves emerged from hiding, some limping, some carrying pups, all looking at their alpha with a mixture of awe and wariness. They had seen him fight. They had seen him bleed for them. They had seen Celine stand with him. One of the elders, old Mara, who had once called for his removal after the rejection, stepped forward. She looked between Aiden and Celine. "You brought help," she said gruffly. "You fought beside her. For us." Aiden bowed his head. "I owed you that much and more." Mara studied him long, then nodded once. "Then we rebuild, together." Celine's hand found Aiden's again. This time she didn't let go. But as the first rays of true dawn touched the scorched clearing, a scout stumbled in from the northern ridge, face pale. "They retreated," he gasped. "But they left something behind, a message carved into the elder oak at the border." Aiden felt dread coil in his gut. They walked to the great tree in silence, carved deep into the bark, still weeping sap like blood. "The heir will bleed. The child will pay." Celine's hand tightened in Aiden's. He looked at her, really looked, and saw the fear she'd been hiding beneath her strength. Then he saw something else. Her free hand had drifted to her lower abdomen, just resting there, protective. The world tilted again. He met her gaze, question burning in his eyes. She didn't speak, she didn't have to. The silver-blue mark at her collarbone pulsed once, softly, in time with a heartbeat that wasn't only hers. A new life. Their child. And the enemy already knew. Chapter 7, Captive Desires. The carved warning on the elder oak seemed to bleed fresh sap in the morning light, the words stark against the ancient bark. "The heir will bleed, the child will pay." Aiden stared at them until the letters blurred. Then he turned away, jaw locked so tight it hurt. Celine stood a few paces back, arms wrapped around herself, gaze fixed on the same threat. The silver-blue mark at her collarbone pulsed once. Slow, steady, like a warning drum. Draven broke the silence first. "They know more than we thought. This isn't random savagery. This is targeted, calculated." Aiden's voice came out rough. "Then we hunt them down before they strike again." Celine shook her head. "No, we don't chase shadows. We draw them out." She met his eyes, calm, resolute, carrying the weight of decisions already made. "The council has a plan. We use the old fortress ruins in the northern range as bait. Let them think the primal bloodline is vulnerable there, recovering from the attack. When they come, we end this." Aiden felt the protest rise in his throat, but he swallowed it. She wasn't asking for permission. She was telling him the path forward, the same way she used to gently correct his reckless strategies in the quiet hours of their shared past. Draven nodded. "You will both be there, but Aiden, you go as no alpha. You go as bait." The words landed like a blade between the ribs. Aiden exhaled slowly. Understood. Preparation took the rest of the day and into the night. Moonshadow's survivors worked alongside the Conclave wolves, patching wounds, reinforcing defenses, moving supplies under cover of darkness. Aiden moved among them, shoulders still bandaged, voice low as he gave orders and offered quiet apologies. Many looked at him differently now, not with blind loyalty, but with cautious respect. He had bled for them. He had stood beside the woman they once watched him reject. When the moon rose high, Celine found him at the edge of the scorched clearing, staring at the stars. "You should rest," she said softly. "So should you." Neither moved. After a long silence, she spoke again. "I never wanted you to give up your title. I know." He turned to face her. Moonlight carved sharp shadows across her face, making her look both fragile and unbreakable. "But I would have. Still would." Her throat worked. "That scares me more than the threat outside these borders." "Why?" "Because it means you've changed." Her voice cracked, just a fraction. "And I'm not sure I know how to trust that yet." Aiden took one careful step closer, not touching, never pushing. "Then let me show you. One day at a time." Celine studied him. The man who had once roared his rejection to the entire pack, now standing quiet, wounded, willing to bleed again for something bigger than pride. She reached out, slowly, and pressed 2 fingers to the center of his chest, right over his heart. "I feel it," she whispered, "the echo, it's still there, faint but real." Aiden's breath shuddered out. He covered her hand with his own, holding it there, not pulling her closer, just anchoring the moment. "I never stopped feeling you," he said, voice low and raw. "Even when I pretended I had. Even when I hated myself for it." Her eyes shimmered. She didn't pull away. For several heartbeats they stood like that, hands pressed together over the place where the bond used to burn brightest. No words, no demands. Just the quiet, aching recognition of two people who had loved each other once, lost each other, and were now standing on the razor edge of something new. Then the wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of smoke and strangers. Celine's hand slipped from beneath his. They're already watching. Aiden nodded once, then let them watch. The trap was set at dawn. The northern ruins were ancient, crumbling towers of black stone overgrown with ivy, halls open to the sky. The council wolves took hidden positions among the crags. Celine and Draven waited in the central courtyard, visible, seemingly exposed. Aiden moved alone through the lower passages, deliberately loud, deliberately wounded, blood scent fresh on the bandages, steps uneven, bait in every sense. He felt them before he saw them. The attack came at midday, swift, coordinated. Black-furred wolves poured from the surrounding forest, crimson eyes burning. At their head walked a tall figure in dark armor, face hidden behind a helm etched with the same crimson eye sigil. Aiden let them surround him. He fought, hard enough to sell the illusion, not hard enough to win. Claws raked his side. A heavy blow sent him crashing against a broken pillar. He went down, blood pooling beneath him, vision swimming. Hands seized him. Iron chains snapped around his wrists, silver-laced, burning against skin. They dragged him through the ruins, past the false vulnerability of Celine and Draven, deeper into the shadowed tunnels beneath the fortress. Darkness swallowed him. When he woke, he was chained to a stone wall in a cavern lit by crimson torches. The air reeked of damp earth and old blood. The armored figure stepped forward, removing the helm. A woman, sharp features, hair the color of dried blood, eyes the same crimson as her banners. "You're the fool who threw away a primal heir," she said, voice smooth and mocking. "And now you'll help us take what he left behind." Aiden lifted his head slowly. Blood trickled from his temple. "You'll get nothing from me," she smiled. Cold. Certain. "We don't need your cooperation, we need your pain. The heir will come for you." She always did have a soft heart. Aiden's wolf snarled inside him, but he kept his face blank. "You don't know her at all." The woman leaned closer. "I know enough. And soon so will the rest of the world." She turned to leave. Aiden's voice stopped her. "Whatever you do to me, she'll make you pay tenfold." The woman laughed softly. "I'm counting on it." The door of iron slammed shut behind her. Alone in the dark, Aiden closed his eyes. He pictured Celine, standing tall in the ruins, silver blue light flaring around her, eyes fierce and unafraid. He whispered into the silence, voice hoarse but steady, "Come for me, but don't come alone." Then he waited, because somewhere above in the light, the woman he had once rejected was already planning how to tear the world apart to bring him home. Chapter 8, Ancient Awakenings. The cavern was a tomb of silence, broken only by the slow drip of water somewhere in the dark. Aiden hung from the silver-laced chains, wrists raw and burning, shoulders screaming from the strain. Hours had blurred into one long ache. His mind refused to rest. Every thought circled back to Celine. Her steady gaze in the ruins. The brief press of her fingers over his heart. The quiet certainty in her voice when she said she would not come alone. He clung to that promise like a lifeline. Above ground, the moon had reached its zenith when the first tremor rolled through the stone. It started low, a vibration in the bones, then grew until dust sifted from the ceiling. The crimson torches flickered wildly. Aiden lifted his head, senses sharpening despite the pain. Then the wall opposite him cracked, not exploded, cracked, like something ancient and patient had decided the time for subtlety was over. Vines, thick, black-green, veined with silver-blue light, burst through the stone as though the mountain itself were breathing them into existence. They wrapped around the iron door, twisting, squeezing until metal groaned and buckled. The door ripped free. Celine stepped through the opening. She was no longer in armor. She wore only a simple dark tunic and leggings, hair unbound, falling wild around her shoulders, but the silver-blue mark at her collarbone now spread. Delicate, luminous lines tracing down her arms, across her collarbones, glowing brighter with each breath. Her eyes burned with the same light, calm yet terrifying. Behind her came Draven, a shadow of controlled fury and a handful of council wolves moving like smoke. The crimson-eyed woman, the leader, appeared at the far end of the corridor, flanked by her remaining forces. She laughed, sharp and mocking. "You came, how predictable." Celine didn't answer with words. She simply raised one hand. The vines surged forward like living whips, slamming the woman's guards against the walls. Stone cracked, bones snapped. The woman staggered back, eyes widening for the first time. Draven stepped forward beside his daughter. His presence alone made the air thicken, but he did not strike. This moment belonged to Celine. The woman snarled, raising a blade etched with dark runes. "You think awakening changes anything? You're still the weak little Luna he threw away." Celine's voice was quiet, almost gentle. "I was never weak. I was patient." She took one step forward. The silver-blue light flared, bright enough to blind. When it dimmed, the cavern had changed. Roots had risen from the floor, forming a circle around the crimson-eyed leader. Vines held her arms outstretched. She struggled, but every movement only tightened the hold. Draven approached then, expression unreadable but eyes softer than Aiden had ever witnessed. "The awakening is complete," the elder said. "The primal power recognizes its heir, and it recognizes the one who stands beside her." He looked at Aiden, not with warmth, not yet, but with acceptance. "You have earned the right to try again, do not waste it." Aiden bowed his head. "I won't." As the first light of false dawn began to filter through the cracks in the cavern ceiling, Celine helped Aiden to his feet. They walked out together, side by side, not touching but close enough that their shadows merged on the stone. Above them, the moon was fading, giving way to morning. But in the quiet spaces between heartbeats, something new was beginning to grow. Fragile, hard-won, luminous. A second chance, and this time neither of them would throw it away. Chapter 9, Flames of Redemption. The first true light of morning pierced the cavern ceiling in thin golden spears, illuminating the dust motes that danced between Aiden and Celine like silent witnesses. They stood motionless for several long seconds after Draven's quiet declaration. Two people who had once shared everything, then nothing, now hovering on the fragile edge of possibility. Celine was the first to move. She stepped back, not in rejection, but to breathe, to give the moment space. Her luminous markings had dimmed to a soft underglow, no longer blazing but still present, like embers that refused to die. Aiden watched her with the kind of reverence usually reserved for sacred places. He didn't speak. He waited. When she finally looked at him again, her voice was quiet, almost careful. "Come with me." She turned and walked toward the shattered doorway. Aiden followed without hesitation, limping slightly, shoulders still raw, but every step steadier because she was ahead of him. They emerged into the ruins under a sky turning pale rose and gold. The battlefield had been cleared in the hours they were below, bodies removed, blood-soaked earth already sprouting faint green shoots where Celine's power had touched it. Life, insisting on returning. Draven waited at the top of the broken steps, arms crossed, expression unreadable. When they approached, he spoke only to his daughter. "The deeper darkness stirs. The one who corrupted that woman was merely a servant. The true source sleeps beneath the Black Spire Mountains. It will wake soon." Celine nodded once. "Then we go there, before it fully rises." Draven's gaze shifted to Aiden, measuring, weighing. "You are no longer bound by your former title," he said. "But the primal bloodline does not accept half measures. If you walk this path with her, you walk it to the end. No retreat, no second thoughts." Aiden met the elder's stare without flinching. "I understand." Draven studied him a moment longer, then inclined his head. Just once, the smallest acknowledgement. "Prepare yourselves, we leave at dusk." He walked away, leaving them alone on the ruined parapet overlooking the valley. Silence settled again. Celine leaned her forearms against the cracked stone railing, gazing out at the healing landscape below. Aiden moved to stand beside her, not touching, but close enough that their arms almost brushed. After a long moment, she spoke. "I used to dream about this," she said softly. "Not the battles, not the power, just mornings like this. Quiet, together. After everything." Aiden's throat tightened. "I ruined those dreams." "You did." She turned her head to look at him. But dreams change. They grow scars. They become something harder. Something real. She straightened, facing him fully. I don't want the old version of us back, Aiden. That version was beautiful, and then it was fragile. It broke the first time it was tested. He nodded slowly, eyes never leaving hers. I know. I want whatever comes next, she continued, voice steady despite the tremor beneath it. But only if it's honest. Only if you're willing to keep choosing me, not because of fate, not because of guilt, not because of power. Because you see me. All of me. The quiet parts. The fierce parts. The parts that will never bow. Aiden felt the words settle into him like roots finding soil. He took a slow breath. I see you, he said, voice low and rough with emotion. I see the woman who stood beside me when I didn't deserve it, who defended me when others whispered I wasn't ready, who walked away with her head high when I tore her heart out in front of the entire pack. I see the woman who just walked into darkness and pulled me out, not because she had to, but because she chose to. His hand lifted, hesitant, then gently cupped the side of her face. His thumb brushed once across her cheekbone. I choose you now, he whispered. Not the idea of you, not what you could give me. You, exactly as you are, scars and strength and everything in between. A tear slipped free. She didn't hide it. Then prove it, she said, voice barely audible. Every day, for as long as it takes. I will. She searched his eyes for several heartbeats longer. Then slowly, achingly slowly, she rose onto her toes and pressed her forehead to his again. This time she lingered. This time she let herself lean into him. Neither moved to kiss. Not yet. The moment was too sacred for haste. They simply stood there, breathing the same air, hearts beating in uneven rhythm, rediscovering the shape of trust. When they finally pulled apart, the sun had climbed higher. The valley below shimmered with morning mist and new green. Celine slipped her hand into his, fingers threading together firm. We have a long road ahead, she said. Aiden squeezed once. We do. She looked toward the distant silhouette of the Black Spire Mountains. Jagged, dark, waiting. Whatever waits there, she murmured, we face it as equals. As equals, he echoed. They turned together, walking side by side down the broken steps toward the camp below. Behind them, the rising sun caught the silver-blue lines on Celine's skin and turned them to molten light. Ahead, the shadow of the Black Spire loomed. But for the first time in too long, neither of them walked alone, and in the quiet space between their joined hands, something ancient and patient began to heal. Chapter 10, Eternal Eclipse. The sun had barely crested the horizon when the small company crested the final ridge overlooking the Black Spire Mountains. Below them stretched a jagged valley choked with black stone and twisted leafless trees that looked as though they had been burned from the inside out. At the valley's heart rose the spire itself, a towering obsidian monolith that seemed to drink the light rather than reflect it. Even from this distance, the air felt heavier, colder, laced with the faint metallic taste of something ancient and awake. Celine stopped at the edge. Her luminous markings pulsed once, slow, steady, like a heartbeat answering a distant call. She closed her eyes briefly, breathing in the tainted wind. It's here, she said quietly. The source. The one that has been feeding on fear and corruption for centuries. Aiden stood at her shoulder, close enough that their arms brushed. The wound on his shoulder had scabbed over, but every movement pulled at it, a reminder that he was still mortal, still breakable. Yet standing beside her now, he felt no fear, only certainty. Draven joined them, his silver hair catching the weak light like frost. The entity beneath the spire is older than Pax, older than the moon goddess's first mark. It does not fight with claws or fangs. It feeds on division, on pride, on the refusal to see what stands right in front of you. His gaze moved to Aiden. You have already faced its greatest weapon, boy. You survived it, now we end it. They descended in silence. The closer they came, the more the ground protested, cracks opening beneath their feet, stones shifting as though the mountain itself were breathing. Shadows moved at the edges of vision, whispering in voices too low to understand. At the base of the spire, a cavern mouth yawned open, black, bottomless. Celine stepped forward first. Aiden reached for her wrist, gentle, not possessive. She paused, looked back at him. Together, he said simply. Her fingers curled around his once, then released. Together, they entered. Inside, the darkness was absolute. No torches, no moonlight, only the soft silver-blue glow from Celine's markings lighting their way. The tunnel sloped sharply downward, walls slick with something that smelled of old blood and regret. Deeper they went. The whispers grew louder, echoes of every cruel word Aiden had ever spoken, every doubt Celine had buried, every moment of weakness Draven had chosen peace over vengeance. The darkness tried to crawl inside them, to remind them of their failures. Aiden felt it most keenly. The memory of the rejection, the sound of his own voice booming across the clearing, Celine's face pale and shattered. The darkness curled around the memory like smoke, trying to make it the only truth. He stumbled. Celine's hand found his in the dark, firm, warm. "Don't listen," she whispered. "That was then, this is now." He squeezed back. "I know." They pressed on. At the heart of the cavern, the tunnel opened into a vast chamber. At its center stood a jagged altar of obsidian, and above it hovered a writhing mass of shadow, formless yet somehow alive, pulsing with veins of crimson light. The entity. It had no face, yet it turned toward them. A voice, many voices, rolled through the chamber like thunder trapped underground. "You come to end what cannot die. You come carrying the same pride that birthed me. The alpha who rejected his equal, the heir who hid her strength, the elder who chose silence." Celine stepped forward, glow brightening until the chamber was washed in silver blue. "We come to end the cycle," she said, "not with pride, not with silence, with truth." She raised both hands. The markings on her skin flared, brighter, hotter, until the light became almost blinding. The shadow recoiled. Aiden moved beside her, then Draven on her other side. They formed a triangle around the altar. 3 generations, 3 kinds of strength. The entity lashed out, tendrils of darkness whipping toward them. Aiden met the first strike head-on, taking the blow across his chest. Pain exploded, but he didn't fall. He pushed back with everything he had. Every regret turned into resolve. Every apology turned into action. Celine channeled her power, vines of light bursting from the stone floor, wrapping around the shadow, pulling it taut. Draven lifted his hands. The air itself seemed to bow. Ancient power, primal, unyielding, rolled outward, meeting the darkness head-on. The entity shrieked, a sound that made the mountain tremble. "You cannot destroy me, I am the fracture between you." Celine's voice cut through the noise, calm, certain. "You are what we allow you to be, and we allow you no longer." She reached forward, directly into the writhing mass. Light poured from her palm, flooding the shadow. It writhed, fought, screamed. Aiden stepped closer, placing his hand over hers. Draven did the same. 3 hands, 3 wills, 1 unbreakable choice. The shadow imploded, silent, sudden, violent. Light exploded outward. When it faded, the chamber was empty. Only the altar remained, cracked, lifeless. Silence. Real silence. Celine exhaled slowly. Her markings dimmed to a gentle glow. Aiden turned to her, bloodied, exhausted, alive. She looked at him. No words at first. Then she smiled, small, tired, radiant. "It's over." He reached for her, slowly, reverently, and this time she didn't step away. She stepped into him. His arms wrapped around her, hers around him. They stood like that, holding each other in the ruins of darkness, while the first real dawn light began to filter through the cracks far above. Draven watched them for a long moment, then turned away, giving them the quiet they had earned. Outside, the valley was changing. The twisted trees were straightening. Green shoots pushed through black stone. The air tasted clean. Inside, Aiden pressed his forehead to Celine's. "I love you," he whispered. "Not because fate says so, because I choose you every day, every scar, every sunrise." She lifted her head, eyes shining. "I love you too," she answered. "Not because you're perfect, because you're trying, because you stayed." They kissed then, slow, gentle, full of everything they had lost and found again. When they finally parted, the mountain was quiet. The prophecy was complete, but as they walked out into the dawn, hand in hand, side by side, a faint new whisper brushed the edge of Celine's mind. A new stirring. Not dark. Something else. Something yet to come. She glanced at Aiden. He felt it too. They shared a look, knowing, unafraid. Whatever waited next, they would face it together. And this time nothing would break them. What happens when an arrogant alpha finally realizes the mate he rejected was always the key to true power, and she might just be willing to give him one last chance? The story of Aiden and Celine has reached its breathtaking climax, but their journey is far from over. If you felt the heartbreak of rejection, the slow burn of regret, the electric pull of second chances, the quiet strength of forgiveness, and the thunder of two broken souls choosing each other again, then don't stop here. Drop me in the comments if you want more episodes, side stories, or even a full continuation of their future. Maybe the new threat that's already whispering at the edges of their peace. Tell me in the replies, whose redemption arc hit you hardest? Do you want Aiden to keep proving himself? Or do you think Celine should make him work for it forever? Should we explore what happens when the next generation starts stirring? Your voice decides what comes next. Tag a friend who needs this kind of emotional roller coaster in their life, and let's keep the pack howling together. The moon is still watching. Are you ready for more?